Thank you for joining us on the Winning at Selling podcast. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
7 tips to winning clients, 15 tips to great proposals, how to present proposals in 15 steps with pictures. There is no shortage of tips of presenting proposals, but are they effective? Remember, proposals don't sell, people do. Thanks for joining us today as Bill and I discuss step 9 in the sales process, presenting your solution and other great ideas on episode 471 of Winning at Selling podcast.
Well, we are finishing up our book, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. The wrap up, last words and appendices. And the last words was kind of a sales pitch. So I'm going to skip the last words, Scott.
It kind of started out that way though, too, didn't it?
Yeah.
But
well,
okay.
You know, so that's fine. I mean, the guy's selling something and that's okay. It was good. The book was really good, but I thought we'd finalize our discussion by just going through some of the appendices, which were the key ideas and what information you found and I found to be the most useful. So I'm going to start off with the order model. I thought that was a great model to follow. Let's go through it. ORD are the qualifying discussion. O is opportunity. Is there enough opportunity for us to continue? Enough of a match? R is for resources. Is the prospect willing to commit the resources, time, money, talent needed to make this a successful endeavor? And I don't think I've ever forced them to explore that enough.
Yeah, so
and
true.
then the D stands for decisions. Who will be part of the decision-making process, and what is their level of control and what's important to them about the solution. Then the E and R are part of the solution that we'll offer, E, the exact solution, and R, the results. So what will the client get from all this? So I really like the ORD part of this. I think we don't do enough as salespeople up front to find out if this is a qualified opportunity for us. And we spend an awful lot of time putting together proposals for people who just want to get a proposal from us to compare to somebody else.
Yeah, I think salespeople need to look at what are the objections that they get after they do a presentation, or what are the biggest stalls and objections they get before they deliver a presentation, and really incorporate some of those issues when we're talking about the ORD and get them out on the table and talk about them before you get too far in the sales process and before salespeople get too emotionally involved in the sale or the outcome, or they already spend the commission check, which happens a lot. And
mentally spent that check.
Yeah. And when we get a process like this, it's a great way to be thorough, and it's a great way to prevent objections. And it's also a great way for us as salespeople to demonstrate our knowledge, to demonstrate our experience, and to be able to demonstrate and deliver the value. Step 1 in negotiations and sales is always to create value and then claim value. And this is a great step for us to really work on creating value so that we can deliver what's most important, what's most valuable, and what prospects are willing to pay for. So
if we focus on this ORD, it really helps us as a sales professional to not start presenting before we know what the heck we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big mistake. We've looked into this idea of our company pitch and how useless that is in general. Salespeople go in and they go in talking, and this really forces them to identify the opportunity, the resources, and who the decision maker are. And it gives the salesperson an opportunity to see what yellow lights. They talked a lot about yellow lights in this book.
I was just going to say that.
What are those objections? What are those situations that say this isn't going well? And if I can't turn that yellow light into a green light, this may not be a good opportunity for us.
Right. There's something on the tracks, and you need to remove it from the tracks before the train can continue.
That's right.
And that's
right.
A yellow light. And that's something that, it's just not going to go away. You're not going to wake up one day and have it go away. Now, of course, sometimes it does. There'll always be somebody that'll prove me wrong. Going, well, it actually happened, Scott. And I go, okay, that's true. But
the one in 1,000, use that to build your business.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Let's focus on the minorities part of the percentages.
That's right.
But this is a great system. And I think that hopefully we've covered it enough that it's inspired people to go out and buy the book. I reached out to the company and I said, this is a great system. How can you become a licensed instructor, or how can we license this? And, cue the crickets. Heard nothing back from anybody. So it's kind of sad because I think that this system can really be introduced into a lot of companies and followed to increase the productivity and effectiveness, which is always the goal. As Anthony Iannarino said, is it effective? And that's what we're really looking for.
So what was one of the things you liked most about this?
I really did like the process and the emphasis on resources. And one thing that I never really spent that much time on is, do they have the talent, or do they have the people that are willing to invest energy into the proposal and the solution that I'm giving? I've heard about time, I've heard about money, but I haven't heard that much about really emphasizing the people and the talent to be able to invest in a solution. And I think, and that's where a lot of solutions stall out. And when they stall out at a prospect's company, or after the prospect buys it, the prospect doesn't feel like they're getting the value. Right. But in reality, it's because they're not really executing on the solution and they're not applying it the way that it should be applied. It's like we're all granted gifts, but can our gifts be used as liabilities? Yes. Can companies buy solutions and have them create a liability on their side if they don't project and plan the incorporation and the implementation of the solution on their sides? And yes, it can be frustrating. So we as salespeople need to really be able to bring that objection to the surface, isolate it, and then to be able to work on preventing it and also ameliorating it too.
Well, I think what this resources thing does is it brings up early the fact that they need to participate in the solution. Yeah. And they can't, maybe if you're buying a product and, you're just going to use it, it's maybe not as crucial. But for most complex solutions, complex sales, the purchasing organization has to do something different in order to make it work. And this is, thinking about resources is a good opportunity to let them know that they're partnering with that. I know you hate that term, but that they are partners with us in making this work. How are you going to bring management involved? Who's going to implement? Who's going to be on the team to cause this to happen, so that we can work with the people? Where are we going to get the information we need?
Oh, I love it, Bill. You said work with, and it just sounds so natural. That's exactly what it is. We're working with them.
Yeah. All right. Another one that I liked was on page 209, qualifying an opportunity. They put out 20 questions. And I know that I get this from salespeople a lot. Oh, it's always so different. I don't really have time to prepare for my call. Oh, what questions? I don't need to have time to prepare questions. Well, here's 20 great questions that you can use as starters for your call, so that you can sit down and look like you did some preparation when you go into it. Yeah, they're organized and they're well thought out, and they're very good questions for getting information from the client.
I think following these questions, and Bill and you and I talked about this before, is how much time do you spend on preparing for an appointment? And I'm not a fan of spending 3 hours preparing for a cold call. I'm just not a fan of it. I think it's wasted time. I think it's built on a lot of assumptions. And we know that this particular company falls within a qualified arena, a universe. And if we've got these 20 questions and we're incorporating them into the conversation, we're prepared and we're working on qualifying them while the prospect is getting there. And hopefully we're getting honest answers while we do that.
Right. So good questioning is part of discovery, right? And I'm a big proponent of discovery. Any other areas that you thought were very good?
I really love the system of, it really defines the how and the what to do at each step of the sales process. I mean, we spent a lot of time on the qualification and really interviewing the prospect to determine the best solution that's going to have the highest value for them to write the checkout for. And in following a system, you're really creating a thoroughness and really ensuring that a thoroughness. And there are some salespeople that don't have a process, and they just want to wing it. They just want to throw it up against the wall, see what sticks. They're talking about things that are not important to the prospect. They're talking about the value of the solution, but if the solution doesn't stick to a problem, it has no value. And they end up adapting to the prospect's buying process unless the salesperson has a selling system that they follow, and they end up incorporating that into the conversation. And sales is leadership. Jill Conrath has said this many, many times, and I've talked to her about it. And she said she didn't author it, but I give her credit for it every time because she's the first one to say it. And we are leaders. As salespeople, we are leaders. We are leading our prospect to make a change. and we are taking them to a place where they may not be comfortable. And when we have a system, we're demonstrating experience. We're also demonstrating a thoroughness, and we are also preventing some of the hiccups along the way where we end up, kind of taking a little beating on our reputation because something happened that we should have known about.
Well, if we don't have a system, as you said, we're going to either use their system or we're going to miss things.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to miss important things like the resource discussion that we just had. Many salespeople I talk to have no system for getting to the right decision makers. And so they lose the deal because they talk to a low level pretend decision maker. So having a system pushes you into asking the right questions and doing the right things. I think in some cases this book was hard to read. It didn't flow nice. It wasn't pretty. It's a textbook in many ways. And so it's a resource book to have on your shelf. And when you're going into a conversation, look at some of those questions, look at these appendices, and make sure that you're tracking into the right direction. And it will remind you to do some of the right things when you go into that conversation. So overall, I feel it was a great resource book. I'm glad that we approached it, and I'm really looking forward to our next book, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by the hosts of the Winning at Selling podcast.
Every professional athlete has a coach, someone to assist and advise. Tiger Woods had 4 swing coaches so that he could stay at the top of his game. What would you like to improve or overcome in the next year? Perhaps as a salesperson, you want to be more productive with your prospecting, overcoming objections, or delivering more effective presentations. As a sales manager, you want to create a spark within your sales team with a new message, a refreshed approach to starting new conversations with prospects, or you are looking for market-ready strategies to increase revenue and shorten the sales cycle with your existing team. Or as a business leader, you want to transform the sales culture and your value proposition for the new marketplace. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why your hosts of Winning at Selling podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Now you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. Go to winningatselling.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself, your people, and your customers, and invest in your future. So as we move on to step 9 of the sales process, presenting your solution, like I said in the opening, we really need to keep in mind that proposals don't sell, people do. And our goal in presenting a solution is really giving a written documentation and a confirmation of everything we've already discussed. Everything that is in a proposal is something that we've already talked about. If you're putting anything in a proposal that has not been discussed, you're creating your own objection. You really are.
I have had people I worked with that mail or email their proposals and hope that the client will read them and call them back excited about buying. I can't believe, and clients will ask you to do this, by the way.
Right,
they'll say,
right.
You just send that over. We'll take a look at it. It's like, are you kidding me? All the work I put into this, I'm going to mail it to you. I'm going to email it to you, let you chop it apart. Let's sit down and at least have the courtesy to give me the time that's reflective of putting this material together. So don't send it out to them ever.
Right. Always, and I think it talked about this in the book, is present it in person. And if you don't have a chance to do it in person, then think about another way that makes it as effective and timely.
Don't send it to them. The hell with them. They don't get it if they're not going to give you the time.
It's not that important then if you can't deliver it to them in person.
Right. That's right. They just want it to grind someone else into the dust. So don't even do it if they won't set an appointment.
I've got about 9 tips, Bill, and I'm curious, what what some of the additions are that you've got on presenting, because you're
Sure.
really the authority when it comes to presenting proposals. And I'm just going to share some ideas, and then please add on to them. So the number one is never title your proposal. So it should really be focused on what is the intent, what is the outcome, what is the action of the proposal. And that is really the goal of why a prospect is going to be making a change. So never title it proposal.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like to do, I don't use this term on the paper anywhere, but I consider it a working document. The first time I go in with a client, the thing that I emphasize the most is this isn't cast in stone. This is our first shot at this for you to make changes in them. And I want the client to make some changes to what we've said, because then they make it their proposal, their document, and their solution. And if I'm doing all the talking, then they can't make it their solution. So I emphasize, look at, this isn't cast in stone. If you see something you don't like, something you want to improve, something you want to do better, let me know. Let's write it in here. Maybe an assumption that I've made incorrectly. Let's make sure we get everything right on this.
Yeah. Number two is only focus on the client's problems, reasons, and desired results, like the ROI. So like I said earlier, is everything that we've talked about is focused in the proposal, and be specific as to the certain areas within the company that your solution is going to be applicable. And this is where you get all the feedback from the user and the decision maker and the ratifier, is to be able to incorporate that into the proposal. And like Bill said earlier, it's a working document. So this is like a playbook after they buy a solution, is how are we going to incorporate it and implement it within the company?
Yeah, I start off with a situation page. That's my first thing, is here's what you told me. Here's what we talked about. Here's what we agreed to. And that's the first section. And we go over that to make sure that I heard them well, and that I am reflecting what they told me. And usually we get a few changes made there, but if I'm wrong in that section, chances are my solution is off base as well. So I really want to make sure that they are in agreement that this is the problem they identified, the issues they want to solve, how they want to solve them, what they want to have happen. And I really make it reflective of that. So that's those problems, reasons, and desired results come out in that situation section.
Yeah. Number three, and I think we've heard this from Anthony Iannarino, is avoid lengthy corporate histories. Nobody's really interested. Put it at the back. It's not, it's an appendix to a proposal, but there are so many things that have changed in this marketplace, and there are so many companies that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years that are not around today. They never adapted. They never changed.
They had great corporate histories.
They did. Yeah. And great stories.
And they had they had offices in Buenos Aires and London.
Yeah. Right. And they're not around today for one reason or another. So just avoid the lengthy histories.
Yeah, I would just agree with that. I don't put anything about history in there. I've talked to them about who our company is, and they know that. They don't need it in the proposal at all.
And I struggle with this when it comes to a bio or an introduction. When I do a presentation, is I really keep it short. It's not really about me. I want to be able to, have the person introducing me give me enough credibility where people want to listen to me. But it's not about me and how long I've been doing this and that, although I do incorporate it because that does add credibility, but I try to keep it short too.
Yeah. If you're presenting to a new group that hasn't met you, I think you're absolutely right. Have your champion, or the person that is driving this forward, introduce you. Don't say the good things about yourself. Let them say good things about you, and then you can just say, "Oh, shucks."
Yeah, so, exactly.
And get focused on them. So if it is a stand-up presentation, don't do your own introduction. Make sure that you've coached and in some cases written it all out for them, and they'll just read it, because they will not put the time into a good introduction for you.
Yeah. Next one, number 4, and I believe it is sort of an apostrophe or a end note to this is probably the only one that's different between men and women. Number 4 is eliminate industry jargon and buzzwords. Now, I hope I don't get myself in trouble with this, but
you already did.
I know. Please hear me out.
I have nothing to say about this.
If you're using jargon to an audience and a prospect, women are going to feel more comfortable asking, what does that mean, than men. Men will not raise their hand and say, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Could you tell me what that means? And it's the majority of men will not do that. and women are more comfortable asking. And I think when you put buzzwords and jargons into proposals, you're alienating people because they're hesitant to ask, and you're demonstrating how much you know, and it's making real obvious to them how much they don't know. And we always want to maintain our prospects' dignity in any time that we're explaining something, so that they don't have to say, I don't know what that means, and make them feel embarrassed. So I don't know.
I think also that jargon can paint the wrong pictures in their minds. What you're saying, that can paint a blank picture. I don't know what you're talking about, but I think it can put a wrong picture. I had a client when I was doing a lot of work with software companies. They had a term, thin client.
Yeah.
And that thin client meant a particular thing when they said it, but when their competitors said it, it meant something different.
Right.
And so if they talk to their competitors already, they use a jargon that seems to be familiar, but is painting perhaps the wrong picture or the competitor's picture in their mind, which may not be what they want. So I would agree. Be careful of all that. Look at it closely and make sure you're not putting in information without explanation.
I think some of those buzzwords can be defined earlier, and obviously, and I know people are going, but Scott, and okay, let me finish your sentence. If you're dealing in like the IT community and you're talking with people who know what MPLS is and they know all of the jargon in that, then you're probably going to incorporate in a proposal, and that's okay because you're working with people that are in that industry and they're submerged in the buzzwords, and sometimes it can demonstrate an efficiency when you are proposing a proposal. So I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, but that's not as common as some of the other areas.
I was working with a client at a med tech company, and it was a mixed group of people. And I had a guy in there that was a neuroscientist, and we were doing our presentation material. And the first day he kept saying, "This is crap. This is crap. This is all crap." And finally, the next day he came back and he said, "This is great. This is all perfect. This is exactly what we need." I said, "Well," I stopped him at lunch. I said, "You got to tell me what's different about yesterday." He goes, "I figured you out." And I said, "Oh, okay. What did you figure out?" He said, "You want us to talk differently to people who aren't neuroscientists." And I said, "That's absolutely right, because they don't understand what the hell you're saying if you talk to them like they're neuroscientists." But often we use jargon to confuse people because then it makes us appear smarter. And I think you alluded to that. So what he learned and what we ended up teaching his whole team was how to speak differently to people who aren't in the know. And a proposal is like that. You are expanding often beyond the people who were part of the process to the people who are going to actually make the decision, and they need to look at it in a different way.
Right. And that kind of builds on number 5, which is keep your proposals short. So they're going to skim it. Your prospects are going to skim it.
They're going to the last page anyway.
Yeah, they're going to look at the price. How much is it? But they're going to skim it. And that's why it's important to have it be a confirmation of everything that you talked about. And it's almost like an agreement. If you don't have an agreement, this is it. And they're going to make sure that everything that you talked about is in there and it's confirmed and it's accurate and it's just as they discussed and there's no surprises, but do keep it as short as possible.
Well, and that skimming and that movement to the last page is why you need to be there to control the environment. I can't think of a situation where I sat down, gave a proposal to somebody that half of them didn't look at the last page and then start listening to me afterwards. But it still gave me an opportunity to move through this document piece by piece and create the argument for why they needed to use us.
Yeah. Number 6 is highlight your key points. So note, and comment that they're going to be skimming and they're going to be looking at it at a very fast pace. Highlight your value proposition that separates you from other companies, and also highlight the key points and the reasons why they want to make a change. So they're looking at this proposal going, do you have a clear understanding about what we want and what we've talked about and the desired outcome? And highlight those points so they can look at it and go, okay, they've got it here. They understand it here. Okay, they've interpreted it correctly here. And the prospect can go through the proposal and go, everything looks great. Let's get a letter of intent or let's sign a contract or go forward from there. But really highlight your key points.
Now, I think from that, you don't mean with a highlight function. You mean like bullets and subheadings and bold headings and those sorts of things. So I can look and I can look at your outline basically by looking at your document.
Right. And in some cases, you might put a summary in. and go,
Right.
here's a confirmation of
summary.
everything that we've talked about.
Yep.
And highlight your key points.
Okay.
Number 7 is create concern about the competition. So you're going to be able to create a value proposition that's going to separate you and make you better than your competition, and look at other options that they were considering. Now, this is a question that you should have asked early on when it comes to, besides me, who else are you considering? What other options are you going to be thinking about? And to be able to incorporate that in a way where you do not disparage your competition, but you simply separate yourself from a competition. You position yourself as a leader in the industry, and then you make your solution better for the prospect and make the prospect smarter for choosing you.
Yeah, I think you said it when you said strike at their weak points, and that you strike at their weak points by emphasizing those unique value propositions that your organization has that they can't meet or exceed. And if you can make those some of the key issues that the client is looking for, then when that competition comes in and they don't have that, then it's going to be weak, and you don't need to disparage them at all.
Yeah. Number 8, present the budget as an investment. Remember during the qualification process, you really talked about what is the cost, consequences, and risk of inaction, which is your main competition. These are people that probably have an existing solution that you're asking them to make a change and buy something else. So there's a cost, consequences, and risk of inaction, of not changing something. And then you're presenting your price as an investment. And this is how you're going to be repositioning yourself in the efficiency of the company in order to increase profitability, increase your value proposition to your customers, increase your market share, whatever the benefit is and the desired outcome, but present it as an investment. And it's going to be easier for them to understand if you're creating a cost minus price equals value, and how this is a value purchase for them, and they're going to be using it as an investment.
Yeah, there should be a greater return than they're spending, or they're not going to put their time into you.
And then lastly, since you are in person, you want to ask for the business. Don't be passive. You have to ask for them to make a commitment to buy from you, and they're ready. And keep in mind that people love to buy. They really do. They hate to be sold. So present it, ask for the business, and then work on the implementation steps.
I think one great way to ask for the business in a proposal is to have 2 options, the mini-me and the big one. I love the alternative choice close. I'm not a big person in having 27 different types of closes. No. I think that's the old Tom Hopkins methodology, but I do like an alternative choice close. What would be better for you, choice A or choice B? And I'm good with either one of them, so I don't care what they choose. And they feel that they're empowered and are making a choice rather than the choice being yes or no. If the choice is A or B, then it takes my brain away from yes or no. Right. And makes an easier decision for that prospect.
Yeah. Anything I left out, Bill, that you incorporate or teach when it comes to presenting proposals, solutions?
No, I think I've added to them when I've had that opportunity, but I do have a resource, and this is more on stand-up presentations. So this has one of the titles you said, that you disparaged at the beginning opening of this, but 13 myths that will wreck your presentation. We've got a blog on that. So if you get a chance to read through that, it might help you before you do your next stand-up presentation.
Great. And we'll have that on the podcast website, winningatselling.com. This segment of Winning at Selling podcast is brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door, by Steve Kloida.
Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer. And the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed, step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com. As we wrap up, we have a golden nugget. I thought I'd go to the famous Yogi Berra because he has so much wisdom. One of my favorites is, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. But this one is a little more complex. You're going to have to think about it. So here it is. In theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is.
He does make you contemplate, doesn't he? You go,
he's a chin scratcher when it comes to that. So make sure you're doing your practice, because there's no difference between theory and practice unless it's in practice.
It's sports philosophy is what it is. And I think there's some winning philosophy in sports, and there's been some head coaches that have given us some really great quotes, but Yogi is one that's just always kind of making you scratch your head. So I guess the commitment is action. Is what we need to commit to.
Well, I think theory is nice, but you won't know if it works till you try it out.
All right. Everything will be on the podcast website, winningatselling.com. So check that out. And we'd be grateful for your feedback too. Thanks for the emails that you have sent us. Tell us what you want us to talk about. Tell us some of the challenges. Yeah. What do you like most? What do you like least? If you could change one thing about the podcast, what would it be? Include that in a note. We'd love your feedback. And as we're getting into kind of a new season, I always think that Labor Day is like New Year's Day. And as we get into the next season where people are getting back to work, hopefully, and kids are getting back to school, hopefully, and we're all getting back into the routine again of listening to podcasts when we're working out, then we want to cover what's most relevant. So please let us know.
The book club next week, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. We're going to start in part 1. Part 1 is called Paradigms and Principles, and the first section is Inside Out. And our topic is going to be Sales Process, Part 10, Closing. Go out and get better, one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.